Welcome to the Therapist Burnout Podcast, episode 103. Hey, therapist. Today I have a guest for you. I have been holding onto this episode for a while. I would love you to join the Therapist Pen Pal list. So if you're not on my list, please get in there. I am revamping my newsletter soon. And I'd love your input too. What do you want to most hear about? I'm thinking about some therapy bloopers. So if people want to write into me, because I just feel like we need some lightness. I talk about burnout and heavy stuff all the time. So I just thought I wanted to add a little levity and aliveness. So it might be like therapy bloopers / aliveness or moments that made you feel alive, either in your work or outside of your work. So I think that's great. I had a wonderful moment with a student this week where sometimes it's just pure joy to work with young people, and I'm really enjoying that part of my work. So little moments that I might experience with my students and my one therapy client that I have, I might share a little bit of that with you. So join me on the Therapist Pen Pal list. I'm thinking of a rename. Maybe talk me out of it. Talk me into it. I don't know. But today I'm talking with Dr. Kiki Fehling. So they are a psychologist and an expert who talks about DBT skills and things like that online. So you can find them at dbtkiki, which I think is such a cool handle, dbtkiki. I just want to say it 10 times fast. So find them over there. And we just had a really interesting conversation. Their burnout story is a good one. I mean, they had a heart attack. So I'm just really interested for you guys to hear this conversation about what happens when our bodies really dictate what we have to do in life. And that happened to me through panic attacks and all kinds of things going on with my own body. But I think to hear it come out with other people is just interesting, because I think stories are important because number one, our brains are primed for stories. That's how we learn. And also, we pick up things that we can identify with in other people's story. We also get into social media and what it's like to be out there in these internet streets. I know it's scary a little bit. I think mostly my experience has been positive, although I have to turn off apps and take breaks and all that stuff. That is something I do have to do, but it's just a really interesting conversation, and I'm delighted to bring it to you. So have a listen. Hey, therapist, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a guest. I don't ask your pronunciation of your last name, but Dr. Fehling. Am I saying it
Yes,
correct? Okay,
you
Dr.
are.
Fehling. Welcome to the Therapist Burnout Podcast. How are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, actually, most people normally don't get my name, so well done.
Yay. Okay. Well, that's wonderful. I'm happy that I got it right. And so I am excited to share all the wonderfulness that you have to share with the folks. And typically I start out by asking you what your burnout story is.
Yeah, really excited to be here to talk about it because it's not something I've talked about in public in this kind of way before. So probably it's useful to start by saying just, I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm also now an author, a content creator, and speaker. And I am a DBT Linehan board certified expert in dialectical behavior therapy. So I used to work as a therapist, specializing in helping folks with borderline personality disorder and PTSD, and really anyone coming in with intense emotions that were leading them to engage in impulsive behavior, self-harm, just having a hard time, people who are really suffering. And I say that I was a therapist in past tense because I am no longer working as one. And that is because of burnout. I would say my burnout story probably starts in graduate school, like many people's. I think graduate school is very difficult. All the seeds of burnout are planted there. So my story is not unique there. But what is unique is in my final year of graduate school, I was 29 years old on internship, the last year of my PhD, and I suffered a heart attack unexpectedly. I had no cardiac risk factors. It came out of nowhere. Heart attacks are usually, obviously, not predictable, but this was particularly surprising at 29 years old. And like anyone going through medical trauma, I was kind of thrown into both appreciating and questioning every single part of my life. And specifically, I found myself asking and trying to answer the question I was used to asking my clients more directly of like, are you living your life worth living? This is a term in DBT that we use to describe an individual's like most joyful, most meaningful life. And I thought the answer was no, actually. I realized that I was not spending my precious time, energy, space on the things that mattered most to me, at least not in the proportion that I wanted to. And at the time, specifically, that mostly had to do with research. I was spending so much time finishing my dissertation and working on various research projects in my areas of expertise. So that was easy. I said, okay, no more of that. The heart attack really catalyzed that. And I decided to go into a full clinical postdoc. My first that job then became my first job as a licensed staff psychologist there at a group practice in Lower Manhattan. And even at the time of making that decision, I felt a little bit hazy about whether clinical work was it for me or not. Like I loved being a therapist, and it was so core to my identity. Having done this work and like spent so much time and effort becoming a psychologist, it felt very strange and silly, like a sunk cost basically of, am I really gonna like quit this right as I'm graduating? So also money. So I said, okay, let me just put this on the back burner and go to this postdoc and become a DBT therapist. So that's what I did. Um, to be clear, I did absolutely adore my work as a therapist, specifically doing DBT, helping people who had never been helped by other types of therapy. I also was pretty good at it, if I do say so myself. So it almost felt like a moral imperative to like help these people who were suffering and to stay like walk the line and provide DBT. Um, I found the work very deeply meaningful, very intellectually stimulating, and at the same time, I found it very physically and emotionally draining. And when I would talk to my colleagues about this, I would get so much validation. Therapy is such hard work. Everyone was like, "Oh yes, I'm burnt out too. I'm burnt out too. This is hard." But there was always kind of a mismatch in like I kind of want to say flavor of how they described the burnout for themselves and how it felt like for me. Like I could tell they got it and they didn't quite get it, and I didn't understand why. So this is all happening. And then finally, I save up enough savings that I can finally do what I've been thinking about doing since my heart attack, and I quit. My partner also quits for very different reasons and not from therapy. And we go and live on a sailboat for a year, which was amazing, but also very difficult in some ways. I'm glad it's over. But it was an incredible experience that taught me so much about myself. And while I was on the boat, I was getting more active on social media. I finished writing and then published my first book, which I had brain space for, given I wasn't doing clinical work. And I started learning a lot more about neurodivergence and self-discovering this part of myself that then was this missing piece of why therapy was so hard for me. That then over that year, getting that more self-exploration, that like completely change of pace and getting to really sit with myself and ask, what do I want from this life? And is there providing therapy what it is? The answer was no. Meanwhile, this writing and content creation opened up speaking gigs and consultation with nonprofits. And so I made that switch completely, got off the boat, needed to go to get back to work or wanted to get back to work even. And so started finding a life built around my love and expertise for challenging stigma of BPD and PTSD, disseminating evidence-based mental health information, teaching people the amazing DBT skills, but all outside of the therapy room. So in a way that's more sustainable for me, basically. Um, Getting to work with my natural rhythms, like taking mini sabbaticals, which I know you've talked about on the podcast, and just finding a way to like do what I love and use my education in a way that is just more manageable and goes along with my natural flow of life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many things I want to ask you from all of
Yeah.
that. So many things. I mean, I wrote down as I was just taking notes as you were speaking, but I think like this heart attack as this catalyst moment, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that from my experience since then, interacting with other heart attack survivors, and then, of course, uh, working with clients who have gone through significant life traumas and medical trauma specifically, I think it's a very natural life event to cause deep self reflection. And I remember at the time, one of my cardiologists made a joke that heart attacks like cause divorces. Like it makes people see things differently and
Mm,
ask the challenging questions that I was asking myself of, am I living and spending my time doing things that I want? So I think the thing about a heart attack specifically is it also forces you to slow down. Like you are so tired, you're so physically spent with the smallest things that I had to take time off of internship, and I didn't work for a month, and then I didn't go back full time for several months. And I'm very thankful to have been able to have the opportunity to do that. But in the process, I learned what it was like to not do anything, to be taken care of, to really have to pay attention to physical symptoms. Also, like anxiety and cardiac symptoms, they feel the same. And so there's a lot of
right.
panic. Yeah, that you're left trying to distinguish what's what. And so it's naturally like not only a catalyst for life change, as I said, but a catalyst for if you enable it to be, it can be a catalyst for like really getting to know your body better. So I was doing all of that at the same time.
Mm. Yeah, that quote from the doctor that a lot of people after a heart, which makes sense. I mean, I think with different physical complaints, right? That most people that have that, it makes sense that they would take stock and just say, "Is this the life I want to live?" And
Mhm,
I think that's the question that therapists reckon with. And sometimes it is a one event, like perhaps a heart attack, perhaps something else. For me, I developed panic attacks. I've shared about this openly on the so I felt like I was having a heart attack. It was not a heart attack, thankfully. And but I think this event where I had to look at what am I doing?
mhm,
My my body is telling me that the way I'm living isn't working. And so I think even if it's not a serious medical event, we know that stress is one of the biggest causes of these events in our lives, right? That's medical research would tell us that most health conditions are attributable to stress. So if we can think of that, that eventually, if we're riding a chronic burnout wave, that we might get there, that it can happen. And I think going back to what you said, this happened to you when you were on internship, and many people don't even make it. Like they burn out before they get licensed, they burn out before they make it into the field. And it's funny because I was just thinking about my experience on internship where I didn't have a medical event, but just because of the stress of the environment, like I almost didn't graduate from my perspective because I had a clinical director who was like writing me up and just kind of targeted me the whole year. And I was in my own therapy and thankful to my mom who gave me the no asshole rule. Shout out to the no asshole rule book. If you've never read it, it's a good read. Just if you have an asshole in your life, which really helped. And I made it through my internship. But many of us, like, we continue to like pass the buck. I can do anything for a year is what I told myself
hmm.
until you
But
can't.
then you're telling yourself that over and over again.
Right. Right. Thinking of this theme of how we I think are trained in a culture that is conducive to I think because I'm very careful about my words about like you didn't burn yourself out, but I feel like our training sets the conditions so that we believe that's the way we have to work. That we have to
Mhm.
give ourselves until we deplete ourselves. And it's modeled to us in our career by many people. So it makes sense that an internship, we feel like we have to be, the good therapist and making sure that we're doing everything right and making sure our documentation and there's even, they call ethical trainings like cover your ass training because
Yeah,
someone's going to get us.
right. And then that doesn't stop after internship, right? Like that just is because everyone's been trained that way. So it keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah. So another part that I, had down here to talk about was like this mismatch you talked about when you were experiencing a burnout and then talking to other people in the field and how they would say I'm burnout, which I hear this all the time. Like therapists tell you you're burned out, but then they'll kind of say, "Oh, you're gonna quit?" Or "You can't do this anymore." And it's like they almost want to talk you back into it, and you're like, "No, you don't get it." You don't get it.
Mhm.
So maybe speak to that a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. I think that it's, I'm sure this is true across the field, but in DBT specifically, right, there's even this part of the therapy called consultation team where in order for it to be full DBT, therapists have to meet together once a week talking about the DBT clients specifically. And that team was created to help with therapist burnout. So it's like baked in that DBT, it's hard. Like there's this ethos of you're burnt out. Well, yeah, that's DBT. And I remember in our that team every week at some point while I was there, we would we would rate ourselves on a scale of 0 to 10 each week on like how burnt out we were. And there was this point where I can't remember if we talked about it out loud or not, because it felt like the elephant in the room. So we probably called it out. Everyone was above an 8, like always.
Ugh.
And exactly. And so for me, it was like, why am I telling my team I'm a 9 or a 10 if there's not an ask there? But also, I'm not asking because I know they're burnt out too, that they can't help me. Right. So there's
Yeah.
this difficulty in we're all burnt out. And so, okay, that's the way that it is. Um, so that was definitely as part of the mismatch. I think that there's a self talk of, almost maybe like a self-invalidation potentially. I can't read other people's minds. I don't know what's going on for them. But I know for me, there was this constant, like, this is normal. Like, this is how it's supposed
Yeah.
to be.
It's like it's weird in the space. I feel like it's almost like we can name the elephant, but we're not gonna talk about it. Yeah, we're
Mm,
burnout, but we won't talk about what that really looks like, what that really feels like, what that's really doing to you, to me, and the experience of it. I think we don't share as like the depths of it, I think, as mental health providers.
I think that's 100% true. Like, we would talk about it in that way and maybe problem solve a little bit like, oh, do you need phone coaching coverage this weekend? But then not dive into the grief or the rage or the exhaustion or the anxiety, depending on the person's given situation, what was going on, and
Mhm.
like really talking about that emotional toll, like you're saying.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the layers of it, like for me, I can just speak from my perspective. I think I remember actually consulting when part of like the biggest catalyst for me leaving the field was me losing a beloved client, not by death by suicide, but it was a significant loss, a significant relationship that I still think of this person all the time. Like they were just a lovely human that I missed and I grieved for. And I didn't, and it was in COVID. So I really didn't know how to communicate that to my peers. And I think I did. I tried to consult with someone and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with, could you talk to me about it?" And they were like, "Here is, what is, gosh, I was just thinking of her book, um, Lori Gottlieb's book.
Mm.
It'll come to
Oh,
me."
I know it, but I have not read it.
Maybe you should see somebody or someone, everyone is screaming in the car like, "This is the title, Jen." Anyway. But that book, I guess and I still haven't read the whole thing, which I will, because I love to have her on the podcast, about what, like, the losses we have as therapists, what they really like, what they take from us, and how that is a loss. It's a real relationship, even though it's not real. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you've also talked about on the podcast the way in which that like training to dissociate, because that's the only way that you can deal with it. It is just the
Yeah.
only way you can cope with it. That when you step away as a therapist, it's kind of like overwhelming the amount that you realize you don't let yourself feel things related to being a therapist. Um, there's so much loss and so much disconnection amidst this like very emotional, very connected relationship that it can feel crazy making a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, I just think it's weird. Therapy is weird. It's hard to explain, I think, from the
Mm.
context of the therapist and what it's like to sit in the chair, and not just for the hour, but for the day, for the weeks, for the months, and how that stacks and how that all kind of weaves itself together. I think it's
Uh-huh.
hard to really explain to people. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious about, like, I did some DBT work, but I didn't train in, like, a Linehan model and doing this consultative group experience. So I'm just curious a little bit about DBT. So I don't know if you wanna talk to me about your DBT journey and maybe a little bit about what you're doing now and how that skill that you learned, you're still applying in other ways today.
Yeah, no, I would love to because I still, DBT has been a love for a really long time now, and it still is. I found DBT. So I did get my first experience with DBT working in a research lab before grad school. But that was just luck. Barely my relationship with DBT started in grad school when I knew I was going to do research in suicide and self harm. And I ended up at Rutgers University, where at the time, Dr. Shireen Rizvi was working and providing DBT, and Dr. Rizvi was a student of Dr. Linehan. So I got connected to her once I learned that DBT was like the treatment, or at least one of them, for self harming and suicidal folks. And very quickly, under Shireen, fell in love with it. Like right away, everything about DBT just made sense to me. So the D in DBT, for folks who haven't heard of dialectical behavior therapy before, stands for dialectics. And it's the idea that two seemingly opposite things can be true at the same time. And so dialectics come into DBT because it was created to help folks with intense emotions, specifically borderline personality disorder, but intense emotions that cause people to also have extreme thinking, like thinking very black and white, all or nothing types of ways. And so dialectics come in as a way to help you find the truth and the nuance between extremes. And so, like, that immediately resonated with me. The way that therapists in DBT are meant to be radically genuine and use self disclosure resonated with me, like just being a human in the room with another human. And then, as you said or mentioned, like these skills are also a huge part of DBT. We view people's emotional difficulties as a skills deficit. That if someone is struggling significantly with emotions, it's because they haven't been taught how to understand, deal with, and work with their emotions. So DBT answers that question along with insight by throwing lots and lots of coping skills at it. So at its core, DBT teaches these skills along with other things, and that is a skill set that now I've been able to translate to the work that I do. There's some research that suggests that DBT skills by themselves can be incredibly helpful for a lot of different mental health difficulties. You don't need that full comprehensive DBT. And so now I have been able to teach folks DBT through social media, through videos, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, through a self help book and another one coming out next year, and generally get evidence based treatment to people at a scale that I could never do when I was a therapist, and that's greatly needed given the kind of dearth of resources in this area.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of therapists dream of that, right? I have people write into me all the time that say, I want to share about whatever their expertise is. Maybe it's working with, estranged family members, and that's their expertise, and they found like they have this knowledge and they want to share it at a greater scale. But I think doing that, whether it be doing a podcast like I have, writing books, and you don't have a podcast, I don't think, right? You've been
I do not.
I didn't think so. But I know that you've been on a lot of podcasts and do like TikTok and things like of that nature. And therapists have thought of that, but they get so overwhelmed because the internet is scary, number one.
So scary.
So scary.
So
And they're like,
scary.
and therapists are not like we are the last people to put ourselves out there most of the time. I think we're more the people who are out here in the mental health space that are therapists or psychologists that are out here doing this work like you and I are. We're like unicorns. I don't think we're very
Mhm.
typical. And I had to fight through so much of my stuff to start doing this. Like, I showed up
Oh my
very
gosh.
scared, messy, and afraid.
For sure. My
Oh my
literally
gosh.
my first video on TikTok was me in real time teaching the opposite action skill from DBT, which is acting opposite to an emotion you don't want to be feeling in order to reduce it. I
Oh
was
my
like, I am currently experiencing intense shame and social anxiety, but we're doing it like we're making a video. So it takes practice and exposure for sure.
Yeah. It does get easier, I think, the more you flex the muscle. And but still, I think for therapists who, they're how do I even know my clients are gonna see it? And then what do I do if they wanna friend me or wanna follow my stuff? And so I think therapists a lot of times have that question of
Mhm.
how do I do this and not feel like I am gonna be wide open and be exposed and then be successful at it, right? Like if I want this to be something that makes money, how do I even do that part?
It's so hard. I mean, I only graduated in 2019 and I received zero training in how to ethically be online as a therapist, right? And I don't think it was even until 2021 that the APA at least released their official guidelines for social media. But it's scary because it's unknown, and then it's scary because it's scary. I mean, just putting your face out there like you said. But then it's social media is hard to be on as a user. It's mentally draining in its own ways.
Yeah.
It's triggering in its own ways that I think beyond the difficulty of being a content creator, I think it's a hard space to purposely put yourself into for business or professional reasons. So I think
Yeah.
that it's very easily overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. So what advice would you give if someone wants to either well, I don't know, I kinda want, the social media advice and then also the book because I feel like there's also
Mm.
therapists that are thinking about the book lane, which I've never done. I've done social media and podcasting, but what are your thoughts? Let's go social media, if they're thinking of putting themselves out there.
Yeah. So I will go with social media. And I'll say, if you want to write a book, you kind of need to be on social media. It's not completely true, unfortunately, but it's not completely true. But you do, in order for a publisher or an agent to be able to sell your book, basically, you need to have a platform, quote unquote. And a platform is what kind of audience or network do you have? And having followers on social media is one of the easiest ways to show numbers. It is not the only way to have a platform, to be clear, but publishers often are looking for that these days, especially for prescriptive nonfiction or nonfiction in general, which is what a lot of therapists might be more interested in. But as for social media, I actually am very soon hosting a webinar with one of my other friends who's a social worker on social media about how to kind of create a business or get onto social media in an ethical way.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
cool.
have the details of that, but I can have you put that in the bio when I have
Sure,
it.
yeah. I'm
Um,
I'm pretty open, I let people share whatever pretty much, so, yeah.
Great. I didn't know that was happening when I reached out to you, but now it's we're trying to, over the past few months, it's become more and more clear to me because people have asked me, how do you know what to do and not to do in terms of making your bio, reaching out to clients, or accepting friend requests or not, right? This kind of, do I respond to comments? All of the really ethical issues. It's really difficult,
Yeah.
as well as balancing the ick of marketing yourself as a therapist. I
Oh.
want to, yeah, exactly. It's so hard. It's so hard. So, biggest
Yeah.
advice is practice the skill of opposite action. But in the meantime, I'm hoping to maybe make some more resources about that. But at least this webinar is coming up. Talking to people who are on social media too, reaching out to other therapists, maybe not with huge followings because they often don't respond.
They won't.
but
They don't have
yeah,
time for us if they're
I
super
know.
big, yeah.
I know. But I'm not super big yet, at least. So definitely, I'm willing to reach out to talk to people and try to talk to them about concrete tips or how to ethically consider this. But reading the
Yeah.
guidelines is another thing I'd recommend.
Yeah, I think that's good. I can link the APA. I'll put that down for the episode, the APA guidelines. I should probably, now that we're talking about it, I should do, a whole episode on that. I think part of me for burnout, though We'll get to the book in a
Mm,
minute. So let me put a pin in the book. So part of me, the concern I have for therapists is they can sometimes treat, I'm going to like launch into social media or content creation, coaching as a burnout escape hatch.
mm,
And I'm wary because I know this was me, right? So I might think of myself who I had other podcasts, I had other offerings, working with folks after brain injury, which was my niche when I was in practice. And so part of me was trying to do that because I was like, I can't do therapy anymore, but I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. So let me try to do this thing online. And I quickly burn out in a big flame that I
mhm.
tried this. It was actually not that long. I think I not that quick. I did it rather, I think it was about a year or so. So could you speak to like, it sounds like you stopped therapy and then you started this thing, but was there some space between that kind of made this more sustainable? What would you recommend to the therapist who might be burnout and is looking for like the income source potentially?
Yeah, 100%. So I guess important to clarify the timeline of things, they actually did overlap. And I think that is important to and speaks to what you're trying to speak to of so I took that sabbatical for being a therapist, lived on the sailboat in 2023. But I got onto social media in sometime late 2022, I believe. Um, and at that point, when I got onto social media, I didn't intend to career switch. I didn't even intend to become a speaker or like become a content creator, capital C, capital C. I simply got on because I read some article about how some obscenely high proportion of Gen Zers were using TikTok as Google for their health information. And so I went on and looked at, I know it's like unbelievable to me. I can't imagine. Um, but apparently that's true even for some millennials. And so I went on and I looked at like DBT and BPD and PTSD to see what was there. And I didn't like what I saw. So I just started creating content, trying to challenge stigma, provide information, like do this value based thing that's like also interesting because I love this talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really well received. And I got followers. And then people reached out for speaking gigs. And like all of that was actually happening before I quit. So it certainly made it feel actually, I wouldn't even say it made it easier to quit being a therapist. Like, I didn't view it as an escape hatch. I viewed it as something that sounded
Mm.
interesting and then that might support like a network growth. I did know the book was coming out. So I was like, well, if this does well, then it's useful marketing for the book. But that's not why I did it. So I do think that's important. Like, whenever I have folks come to me asking about getting on social media, I tell them one of the first things you need to do is ask yourself, like, why? Why am I getting on? What are my purposes for getting on? And it needs to be incredibly value based, right? To be sustainable. And then your why, because social media is hard. And then your why also is important to know for making all of those ethical decisions. Like why you're making content will directly impact how you handle it ethically as a therapist. So I think it has to come from like, am I doing this to create a platform for a book versus am I doing this to combat stigma? Am I doing this because it would be fun? Hopefully, like a combination of all of these things, and especially the last one. But just like step into it and start small, even if you need to see how it goes and to see if you like it. Because if you don't, it's can't do it.
Yeah, I think there has to be some level of enjoyment and yeah, I think important to find the platform that, like me, linked I'm on LinkedIn, and I think that was important for me to find more of a text-based platform, and sometimes it is like, if you don't wanna be on video, like thinking of like LinkedIn or like Substack, a lot of people do really well on Substack, which is like a
Yes.
little sleeper, like it does kind of work some ways like social media, but not because it can be like a pseudo newsletter, but it's very interesting how some people are able to build on Substack with a written Substack newsletter, which is really cool. So I think there's options for people if they're like, I didn't want to show my face forever because I was just
Mhm.
like, I don't know, it just didn't feel right for me. So that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Substack and Threads definitely probably going to be growing in 2026 and you don't need your face for that.
You don't, yeah, so I think there's options for people if they, do wanna do more writing or whatever it is if they want to branch out. But what I'm hearing that you said was it started more like you did write a book, and it sounds like that book was, like, the collection of your work in some ways, right? And
Yeah.
And so it was partly sharing that, like, I'm sharing that and I'm sharing, like, I'm seeing this stigma and I wanna help with that piece. And I think for me, I think the mission of my podcast and what I do on LinkedIn is because I felt like no one was really addressing burnout for therapists. I was shocked, by the way, that there is no therapist burnout podcast, and I was like, "Okay, I guess it's mine. I guess I'm gonna do this."
Thank
Uh
goodness it's needed. Yeah.
It is needed. I think we hear people talk on burnout on other podcasts, but no specific podcast specifically for this. So part of my mission was thinking of I actually did a through line in my career and I did my dissertation on compassion fatigue and I'm like, "Oh, yeah. I've been wanting to lead peer groups my whole career, so I can see this through line through my career for years, but didn't put it all together because I felt like,
Mhm.
I had to be some PhD Stanford person who whatever, like I was sidey and, you know, we always are gonna doubt our knowledge. We're always gonna doubt what we know, and then what I've come to know is, like, I'm proud of the person who started scared and afraid and I realized that I do have some real expertise and I have good things to say. And I think the more you work this muscle, the more you can feel confident, the more you can feel like you do have something to say and your voice is important. And so
Yeah.
that's, I think, always the wonderful reason to start if people want to start talking, which I didn't know we were going to go here, but this is where we're going on this conversation.
Yeah. This is where we are. And I love it. I think everything you said, 100% agree. The thing I will also add is there's been a little bit of research into like what are people looking for when they're searching for these health terms on social media. And people do tend to prefer getting the information from professionals. So already, like you're saying, I think there's both a you know more than you give yourself credit for. And
Yeah.
as a therapist, as a licensed professional, if you're listening to this podcast, people want to hear from you. So folks
Yes.
are looking for voices like yours. So I do think there is a like believe in yourself and get out there.
Yeah, I just think in our what I've found working with therapists is that there is a lot of self-doubt and feelings of inadequacy when I start working with them and they tell me about their niche or their expertise and I'm like, "You are a freaking badass." Like, do you realize how much you know and how much you can share if that's their desire? Like, I'm not going to push anyone if they don't want to share, but a lot of therapists do have this desire to share their knowledge and their expertise and the way they talk about it, I'm like, "Well, I don't know anything about that. You should share it." Like, this is
Hmm.
wonderful information. So,
Hmm.
I think a lot of times we need that push sometimes to know, like, you actually do know what you're talking about. And it's a problem that often female identifying folks have is that they, will defer and think, "Oh, well, it must be someone else who has this level of training or expertise that knows the topic." But maybe people don't wanna learn from them. They wanna hear from
Yeah,
you.
what 100%. And I think that the thing actually, I have a document for my to do and lots of ideas for social media. And at the very top, I have a quote that is all about kind of what we're talking about. Like we forget that people don't know what we know. Like the thing that is obvious to us because we've been through years of training and experience is actually mind blowing for people.
Yeah.
Like think about the psycho ed you give to your clients all of the time. Now imagine doing that to hundreds of people at once. Like it's really powerful, and you shouldn't take advantage that you take it for granted that you have extreme expertise that people want to know. People want to improve their mental health and be happier. So we have the power to help them do that.
We do. We definitely do. I am curious, like, going back to your decision to stop being a therapist because that, was something that I had the decision well, I could say that I'm not a therapist anymore, but I actually am seeing one client. now. I am
Oh,
I'm a therapist again to one client, and I'm keeping
wow.
one client for a time just to see how it feels like to hold that.
Mhm.
So I'm not launching a private practice or going into being a full-time therapist, but, yeah, I think yeah,
Congrats.
just thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to see how that
Yeah.
felt again for me. But I am curious about this pivot for a lot of people because sometimes they are done. And we hear a lot of times that, "Are you sure?" Like, "Well, maybe you can take a break and then go back to it." That may not be your truth. So I'm wondering for you what that was like for you.
Yeah, it was really difficult. I think that I'm pretty sure one of my old mentors did call me out on this a few months ago when we talked on the phone of like, oh, so you're finally admitting you're not coming back. Like, I I feel like for the past 2 years, like even when I quit, I was like, this is just a sabbatical. This is just temporary. And like, I really wasn't sure when I quit,
Mm,
if it was for good or for just for temporary. Like, I knew I just wanted to take that break after wanting to do that ever since my heart attack. But as the time has gone on and I got that lived experience of like that gut feeling of like, oh, this was the right thing to do. Like, there's so much more space
mhm.
in an energetic way, not logistical, that is so much more helpful for my personal life that has become more and more clear. And the tension or the influence, I suppose, has been around like letting go of that identity of
Yeah,
being a DBT therapist. And it is really sad, but that's why this new way of like, I still call myself an expert in DBT, but I'm no longer a practicing therapist. And it's a way that I've been able to like, find the dialectical synthesis of this is a thing that was true for me, and there's parts of that will never leave me. And at least for now, it's over. And like, change is constant. Maybe I'll try to be a therapist again, but for now, what I'm doing is working.
yeah, I like that. Yeah. I see some people who, like, do leave and they don't turn back, and yeah, I think it's interesting because I said that for a while that I just didn't know, and then the situation came up that I did take a client, and I was like, "Huh, it still feels great." So, I'm just seeing where that is, if I'll hold just a client or 2, and that works for me, but I'm not building beyond that. I'm not even taking 2 clients, I'm just taking the 1 client
Yeah,
just
I
to
mean, that's
experiment.
awesome.
And that's what I recommend to people, see how it feels. Like, you can try something and it may not work. Oh, you tried something.
Yeah,
Great. And then
yeah,
maybe it wasn't the right thing, but then you continue to just try new things. Try a different job. Try dabbling. Try social media. Maybe that's for you. Maybe you find out, oh hell no, I don't want to do that.
yeah,
So the
100%. I think the
yeah.
trying and the experimenting, the exploring, the playing is a huge part of it. And really, again, that just comes back to like really what started this was the heart attack of like just completely breaking apart all of the stories I had about myself and like my abilities and how I spend my time. And so, in a very post traumatic growth type of way, I'm thankful for what I went through, even if I wish I had it hadn't happened at the same time. And so, not everyone can do that, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
about trying things and seeing what's there, like what happens and what shifts with the new opportunity to just check in with myself of do I like this? Do I not like this? Is this aligned with my values? Is it not? Is this changing what my values are? So yeah, I think I just offer that word play again. Like everything is changing constantly and we never know
Yeah.
what's coming, even if we think we do.
I like that. That's great. Well, as I do when I close with folks, I'm going to ask you, how are you finding joy today?
Oh, well, I would say it's literally today I am doing a lot of cleaning and organizing. I have another fellow content creator who has what she calls an avoidance advent calendar, where
Oh.
it's like trying to get doing like the things that you would avoiding all year and try to get them done before the start of the year to like
Ooh.
set off in a more clean way. And so, it's been hard, but I've been doing a lot of that today, right before this podcast. And it feels really good to like get that off your chest and then reward yourself for it with like small treats. So that's been giving me joy lately.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I don't know, I've been in that mode too a little bit. I was like, I cleaned out a closet in my mudroom. I live in New England in the US, so we have mudrooms because, I live in a cold climate, so you need a mud I grew up in the Virginia area, like, near DC,
Oh,
and so I was like, "What's a mudroom?"
yeah.
People
Capture
en
all the salts
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
you enter in the side doors of homes here in New England, so it's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the,
Yes.
like, Scandinavian, like, sweaters that I have to wear in the winter, but
Yeah.
at any rate, it's been great having you on the podcast. Where can folks reach out if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on most social media platforms at dbtkiki or connect with me on my website. Reach out there, kikifehling.com.
Great. And what about the social media workshop or webinar that you're doing? Oh,
Yes. So I'm sure I'm thinking about how the best way to say it.
yeah, I mean, if they're on your list, they'll probably get it right. But if it's after this recording, I don't, it's like, how do I find them
Yeah,
there?
yeah. I'll definitely announce it on. So I will definitely announce that training on my social media, and I think I'll have the link that I can give to you to put in the bio. I do think that's live right now.
Oh, great. Cool. All right. Well, it's been great having you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome.